Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Dom from Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals, and welcome back to the channel. So last week, I did a quick topical video on the URSA Mini Pro 12K from Blackmagic Design, where we briefly discussed that newly designed 12K image sensor, as well as talked about media for 12K recording. But more importantly, in that video, I asked you to reach out and tell me what I should shoot in 12K for this week's video. And I got some epic responses from an Instagram poll that I took, as well as in the comment section of the last video. Unfortunately, I was not able to shoot a lot of the things that you guys suggested because up here in Massachusetts, we're in the middle of like a month-long rainstorm. I'm not even kidding. So I tried to do a lot of shooting outside, like a lot of the nature things you guys suggested, but I simply couldn't. I only had the camera for a week before I had to send it back to our sister company, Lens Rentals. But nonetheless, I think we have a good basis of 12K footage to talk about, and I have a lot of thoughts about 12K video that I want to share too. So let's dive in. Okay, first, I want to clear something up about media. I shot two of our test charts in 5:1 and 18:1 B-RAW, the two compression extremes. However, I couldn't tell any noticeable difference in those two clips, but I think the difference would be a lot more apparent in moving subjects anyways, not just a still chart. But I kind of expected to see some difference. One interesting note, when I brought it over to our Edmunds resolution chart and zoomed way in post, right here in this solid black part of the chart, some photo sites seem to be misfiring. And guess which compression mode this was in? 5:1, which is supposed to be the cleanest. This didn't happen in any other compression ratio, which is interesting. Okay, last note about media. In most cases, I don't think you even need the external 12K recorder on the back of the URSA 12K unless your preferred media is absolutely 2.5-inch SSDs. It makes the camera much bulkier and it takes a good bit of time to install. All this so you can just mount a certain type of SSD better. And in my research, it seems the drives that are going to give you the best write speeds aren't normally the 2.5-inch locking form factor SSD. In my experience, to shoot 12K B-RAW 5:1 continuously without the buffer running out after like 2 seconds, the only media that worked for me was a Samsung T5 SSD. Taking a step back though and kind of looking at the media situation, it's really insane that you can actually record 12K B-RAW to an SD or CFast card. You just have to drop the compression down a lot. But from what I noticed, that doesn't really change the quality a lot at all. Okay, this is what we're all here for, resolution. So in this next segment, we're gonna pixel peep pretty hard, but what else do you do with 12K video? When you start with the full image and zoom in, you get like seemingly endless resolution, like zooming in on a medium format photo. It just keeps going. I stated in my last video that you can get 9 4K images out of this full 12K image area. So here's a little demo to show you the resizing potential. The 4K 120 FPS looks pretty great too resolution-wise, but wasn't quite as flexible to color. And as with any camera, slow-mo tends to reveal the noise a bit more than full speed. Here's a quick side-by-side of a 12K shot and a 4K shot using the 12K image area. And here's a few 4K shots using the camera's Super 16mm crop mode, which basically doubles your focal length with some spare change. Alright, so moving on to color. To be honest, I was worried about how the color rendition was going to go when I was first thinking about shooting on the 12K. Blackmagic cameras can be tricky sometimes as is, and with a totally new sensor with a non-Bayer photosite array, I was extra cautious. However, I was totally proven wrong. The colors behaved the same as regular B-RAW, and even had a decent amount of motion in the shadows. Even in this purposefully underexposed clip, the gain is very well maintained, and I still had some room to play with color. When I brought my friend Kyle into the studio, I was also quite impressed with how the 12K rendered skin tones. Side note, please be nice to Kyle in the comments section, by the way. He's kind of rocking that quarantine flow, and that is not limited to his nose hairs. Anyways, I think those values in his face held up really well, even when I manipulated the values in the background. Alright, quick note about dynamic range. From the research I did, I made sure not to underexpose the image because that's where everyone seemed to have problems. So I tried to keep my scopes right in the middle of my histogram. Alright, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering how your editing software would handle this 12K footage. And the short answer is surprisingly well, if you're in DaVinci Resolve. So I began making this video that you're currently watching in Premiere. I made proxies of the 12K clips, which went fine. Then I started to work with those clips when I quickly realized playback was really rough. Unless you're on a very capable computer, you should do all of your 12K workflow in DaVinci, then export to Premiere via XML. After doing this, it will play back a lot better, but honestly still not as good as if it was in DaVinci. So it was at that point that I decided I might as well jump ship on this project and move to Resolve. Alright, now we're in Resolve, and in this strange land, 12K video flows like water, which is certainly no surprise because this is Blackmagic's own editing program. Still though, even in Resolve, I had to set the timeline resolution to 4K to view the 12K video fluidly. The second I went up to 8K, things got really slow again. So the name of the game for 12K editing is either decode each clip to 4K or just set the timeline to 4K, which is easier in my opinion. So to revisit this question I sort of posed in last week's video, which was, how do I see 12K video being used practically? Well, the first thing that became very apparent after editing this 12K video was 8K mastering. Okay, basic crash course on downsampling. If you export a video that's smaller than its original source file, it's going to look crisper than if you had shot that in that final resolution in the camera in the first place, if that makes any sense. Basically what you're doing is giving your editing software a lot more information when it writes that final video. And that is like the whole purpose of this camera if you ask me. They super bulk up the resolution so you have a ton of room to work with in post, which is like Blackmagic's whole deal. They have a very post-heavy mindset. This also counts for resizing. As I showed you earlier, you can get 9 4K frames within the 12K image area, which is again, humongously flexible in post. Specifically, I can see applications for 12K video in VFX where a lot of the times it's just the more resolution, the better. Another thing that comes to mind for 12K video is like a super modern, clean, crisp product or spec type shoot where the utmost detail is needed. In a specific example, I guess, it would be really great to use 12K video when trying to counter something like moire. Say you were shooting like a really fine fabric, which often gives off that effect on video. I think tackling that with more resolution would diminish that effect. So my final takeaway from this is the biggest application for 12K video that I can see is exporting a very resolution-rich 8K downsampled master video. And also, that's how I think you're going to see the URSA 12K used in the real world as well. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up on this video, dissecting the 12K video from the Blackmagic URSA Mini Pro 12K. So if you have any questions or comments about the workflow from this camera, or you have any insights about 12K video in general, drop a comment in the comment section below and we'll start a discussion. Also, if you happen to like this video, hit that thumbs up button down below to let me know you liked it. Lastly, if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. And if you are subscribed, you can hit that little bell button down there to be notified whenever we post new content, which is every week. So take care, and we'll see you in the next one.